perspective. And,
yeah. And he teaches very different than Denzi.
Yep.
So it was good. It was very good.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so that's
What's your favorite skill?
Excuse me for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, and welcome to Journeys. I'm Golda, your host, and today we're going to be continuing on our co-counseling theme, and our guest is Pam McDonald. Mrs. McDonald holds a master's degree in library science. So does my mom.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Pam first started in co-counseling in 1988, taking a series of fundamental classes. These classes encouraged her to go on and become an instructor. Pam has taken 4 years of rigorous training to become a co-counselor trainer. She has over 15 years of experience doing co-counseling as an instructor. Pam has served as logistic chairperson for the annual Co-Counseling International Conference and for many workshops. She holds the position of secretary to the Co-Counseling Teachers Group. It's a pleasure having you here.
It's wonderful being here, Golda.
Great, and I'm very anxious to hear about present time, how it's used in co-counseling, and how it's used in real life.
Okay. Well, first of all, it's useful to understand that in co-counseling there are many technical skills, and present time is just one of those technical skills. It's one that we learn very early. When we pair up in sessions, and one person is doing their own work while the other person listens and supports the work of the first person. So when that person does their session, they may go into emotions and memories that trigger reactions that they want to explore, because some of those reactions are in their way when they're living their life outside of the co-counseling session. So what they're doing is exploring those triggers that get them in trouble, however minor, but trouble outside of their life, and look at them in a safe environment. But as they unpack some of those memories, some of those reactions, they want at the end of the session to become fully present and ready to drive their car and ready to have a normal conversation and so on. So present time is that technique that we use to bring people back to the present moment and let those memories or whatever get packed away for the next time they want to be explored.
How clever.
Well, it's a really important skill, and so that's the purpose of present time. But I'd love to tell you a story. After I took my first couple of co-counseling classes, my daughter, who is now 28 years old and doing very nicely, when she was about 4, and probably starting around 3 years old, she would have these temper tantrums, and they were awful. And this one day, after I had learned these skills, I thought, well, maybe I'll just pay attention to her. Like I can't really stop her temper tantrums, and I felt kind of bad for her, and I also wanted to be able to be a good mom. So what is there to do to support her in being able to manage herself better than that? I had the impression that those temper tantrums were intentional, that she meant me to know how angry she was, so she was having a temper tantrum. Well, so she was having her full-fledged temper tantrum, and she was pounding her fist. She was lying on the floor. She was pounding her fist. She was kicking her feet. She was yelling. And no matter how long I sat there just sort of being with her, not resisting it, not doing anything, she just didn't stop. And I thought, okay, so this is not sufficient. So what else can I do? And I knew she wanted to not miss lunch, which we had to be at a certain place on time in order to have lunch together in a cafeteria. So I said, Amanda, if we don't stop we're not going to make it to lunch on time. And Amanda said, I can't stop.
Oh, no.
And I said, oh, well, I think I have a way for you to stop if you want me to use it with you. And she said, okay. And so I said, I'm going to ask you some questions, and you just answer the questions. Okay. And so I asked her some questions that were easy for her to answer, with the answers kind of right in front of her. So, what is the color of a dress that's hanging in your closet? What is your favorite pair of shoes? What book is sitting on the shelf over here?
Had nothing to do with what the temper tantrum and what it was about.
Absolutely
right?
nothing to do with it.
Oh, okay.
And that was the whole idea,
Yeah.
is to distract the pattern that is causing that temper tantrum and distract her attention away into some other area.
The direction, right.
Right, another direction. And so I asked her probably about 5 or 6 questions. And gradually the motions and the screaming calmed down. And finally she was okay. And she said, Mom, how did you do that? And I explained to her actually how I did it. And she never had a temper tantrum at that level again after that, because she had learned from me how to manage her own temper tantrum.
Almost like how to distract herself
Yes.
from what was going on.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
So that was one way that I used present time in real life.
Yeah.
And it was good for everyone. You know, it was really good for us all.
Yeah, that gives me a good idea. I have a dear friend who has a granddaughter who's at 4 is still having temper tantrums.
Oh, yes.
And I'm going to suggest that to her to see if that might help, because the mom just picks the child up and moves forward.
Yeah.
This might be more advantageous to the child to learn how to handle it herself.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, that's not to say that this is the perfect answer for all temper
Right.
tantrums,
Right.
but it is something to try, and it's something to experiment with, and it's a way of reacting differently than you usually do, which can be a surprise for someone who's in pattern. So if you react in an unexpected way, sometimes that can be a way of distracting them into something else.
Yeah.
So,
So going back to co-counseling,
yes,
I'm not having a temper tantrum during my session, okay?
Right.
But how would that work in co-counseling?
okay. Well, would you like to try like a little short session, and I can show you how it works? And I know you're a co-counselor, Golda, so I know you know the skills. So if you would like, you and I can set a little contract. We can have like a little 30-second session, and then I'll do present time with you at the end of that
Okay, so
session.
basically it's a demonstration.
Yes,
It's
a
not a
demo.
real co-counseling
Right,
session,
right.
because there's a lot more that goes into that.
Right, exactly. And
Okay.
most co-counseling sessions, even the short ones, are longer than 30 seconds. But
And, right. Okay,
okay, so you can pick anything. You can pick any experience that you've had that has some emotion to it. It could be a joyful emotion, or it could be, you know, a troubled emotion of some kind. So just pick something and then talk about it as if you were living it right now in this moment. And that will bring up some of the emotions of that time. And you'll be able to look at how you operate when you're in that state.
okay, so I'm to go back to like my childhood
Yes, they.
and remember something that's still stuck in my mind.
Yeah, and that pushes you, you know, in life now as an adult.
Okay. All right, so here I am, and it is Hanukkah. And there's a bunch of presents on the table. And my sister and I are very excited, and we go to open gifts. And I, in my excitement, open one of my sister's gifts. And I got yelled at. And it was an accident. I was excited, and I got yelled at. And it was like this sharp, searing, you know, I took it like I'm bad, I'm greedy, and I really threw a lot of junk at myself because of that. And
So can I offer you some present time?
ooh. Yes, please, some present time.
Name 3 trees.
3 trees. Pine trees, an oak tree, and a maple tree.
And how about 4 states that begin with M?
M, Missouri, Mississippi, Montana, New York. I can't think of a 4th one that starts with M. Oh my goodness.
So are you present?
I'm present.
There you
You're
go.
right. Yes.
So you've actually demonstrated one of the elements of present time, which is there are no wrong answers in present time. The point is not to get the right answer. The point is to come into the present moment. And whether you get the right answers or the wrong answers to the questions doesn't really matter.
Well, the thing I felt was that what I was talking about before moved aside so that, well, I needed 4 states that started with M. And it was like this, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. And so that took
Shifted
my
your
mind
attention,
off
yeah.
completely what we had been talking about.
Right. So let's see, we've told a real life story about present time, and we've done a little demo of the session. We left one thing out of the session though, which is the setting the contract at the beginning. So we could show that if you want.
Okay.
Okay. So if you're the speaker, you would request the contract.
So I'm the self-counselor.
Yes.
And you are the co-counselor.
Yes.
And so what I would like from this session, quote, quote, is aware, caring attention. So that kind of means you don't do anything else except look at me with kind, gentle look. I say facial affect, which means you can smile or you can, whatever. I'd like you to intervene, and of course not tell me the answers, but intervene to help me emphasize something that's important that I might not be aware of. We set a time, whatever that time limit is. And one more thing that I can't remember, facial affect.
Sometimes touch, like we might
Sometimes-
hold hands across the table or something
okay.
like that.
Yeah.
So some people want that, some
Yeah,
people don't.
okay, so I would generally say touch if I reach out. Yeah,
Right.
and sorry.
Well, I was just going to say that because we can set a contract at the beginning, and in fact that's part of the process, is always setting a contract at the beginning, it creates a safe space so both parties in the contract know when it begins, when it ends, and what the rules of engagement are through the contract. And then each person can interrupt the session if they feel they need to change the agreements midway through the session. So nobody's locked into anything that they don't feel comfortable with or don't want to do. So setting a contract lets everybody know what's going on. Being able to change the contract or request a change in the contract mid-session, and then having agreed for the time, we usually use timers, and the session is over at a certain time, so everybody knows.
And then at the end, we do
Present
present time.
Right.
There we are. So then I'm back and I'm able to then be your co-counselor
Right.
and
Because-
give you that aware, caring
Right.
attention that I might not have been able to do if I was still little Golda,
Right.
feeling shame and feeling embarrassed.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I found that switching of roles, which is, again, essential in a co-counseling environment, everyone switches roles. It's never a one-way street. That creates a lot of safety, but it also no matter how experienced that co-counselor is, they're not the expert. They're not the perfect person helping the less perfect person or something.
Yeah.
Like everybody has their stuff to work on. And if you're, 15 years or 25 years experienced as a co-counselor and someone else has just started, 3 weeks ago, in that co-counseling arrangement, that contract, these are peers. These are absolutely peer people. And since that contract does switch between those two, you change roles, the person who's only had 2 weeks or 6 months experiences being supportive for even the most experienced person.
Yeah.
And it really changes how some people at least see themselves as not always being the one who's helped, but it can also be the one who is supporting another person.
Yeah. And you decide what your contract will be. I usually have interventions, but there are some times when I say no interventions.
Right.
And last week I decided I needed that half hour to make a to-do list. I was very anxious. I was very, there was too much going on in my life, and I needed the space to just make a to-do list.
Right.
And I told my co-counselor, interventions are fine, but this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And it was wonderful. It was my time, and nobody could step in and take away my time.
Right.
And I got my list done.
Yes.
And I really felt very good at the end of the session doing that.
And don't you find it interesting that when you have the attention of another person, it's much easier to pay attention to yourself.
Yes.
Like if you're off in a room by yourself, my mind tends to wander and not stay where I intended to be. But if I have an agreement with someone that they're going to be listening to me, it's much easier for me to maintain my attention on what it is that I want to maintain my attention
Beautifully
on.
said,
Yeah.
Pam. Beautifully
Well,
said.
thank you.
No, because it's true. As a person who is ADHD, I can be all over the place. It's really hard. But I know that that someone is listening to me, and in the other role, I know I have to be present for that other person.
Yes.
And that's what I have to concentrate on, and it works.
Yes.
It really works.
Yes.
So that's good. So can I give you a present time?
Sure. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Maybe 3 or 4 streets you drove on to get here.
My goodness. Well, I did not know my way here, so a lot of these streets were new to me. I do remember Willits. I do remember Governor Winthrop.
Ooh, good for you.
And there was another one that I should remember because it's one I use all the time. It goes by the New London Courthouse. But I don't remember the name of it. I did take an exit that started me up 32, and then I had to turn around and find my way a different way.
Okay.
So those are the streets I took, however circular they were.
So I want to thank you very much for being here and for explaining present time and knowing that it really is something that is, it's, I want to say a blessing. If you're really working hard on something, to have that happen to you.
Right.
And I also want to tell everybody that if you might be interested in co-counseling, you can contact co-counseling, cci-usa.org. And thanks again.
Well, thank you, Golda. It was a wonderful opportunity.
Okay.
Thank you.